This is the updated note block that's able to detect the block that's underneath in order to change which sound it makes. I updated the pattern, but it's still the same jukebox and note block. That means on the left there's a button to play back the note, and then on the right it advances the note. Over here I wrapped the block in copper foil tape in order to make a copper block. I have two leads poking out the bottom, and since the copper is conductive, then it just carries the signal over. And so the way it detects a block is that we can place a resistor here, and depending on the resistor value, we can determine which block is underneath. And since it's a modular system, all we have to do is add pins and then place a resistor and then connect from there. I was able to find a full version of the code. The only slight issue with this code is that you'd have to have a delay before communicating if you're using it outside of the Arduino Uno. The full version of the code is really powerful because it does unlock all the features that are in the MP3 module. I heavily recommend the full version because it can really allow you to expand a lot further with the MP3 module. So let's take a look on the inside. I'm using a piezoelectric speaker for the sound. The battery is 3.7 volts and it's able to be working just fine. Since it is modular, you can just hook up power through the pins. I'm using serialization in order to communicate between the microcontroller and the MP3 player. The microcontroller reads the voltage in this voltage divider, depending on which resistor is hooked up. Once read, it will determine which file set to use. The communication is done through these receiving and transmissions that get sent to the MP3 player. And again, the left button will play the current file, and the right button will play the next file. I added a slight delay just to make sure that the note does get sounded off, so if you hold it, then it will play most of the note. I was having a little bit of issues where if I tried to plug in the power, it wouldn't start up the serialization, but I fixed this by adding a delay, and so the delay I think allows the MP3 to boot up, and after it's already booted up, then the serialization will work. I found a solution because I would notice that when hooking up power, the MP3 would start up, and I would have to lift this microcontroller out and place it back in. By doing this, I realized I was just resetting the microcontroller. Since I realized that there was an issue with the startup, then I put a delay on the microcontroller, and this allowed the MP3 to boot up, and then finally allowed it to communicate with the microcontroller. For the communication, I do have a 1000 ohm resistor just to protect the MP3 player. The MP3 module expects and sends out a voltage of around 3.3 volts, so anything above that could risk frying it. There's no protection for the transmitting because it's already sending out 3.3 volts, and the microcontroller is able to detect up to around 5 volts. At first I thought about detecting which file is currently playing in order for it to never be out of sync with itself. In order to simplify it, I just made a counter and it doesn't seem to ever get messed up. It always seems to stay on track, even when it's set on the block to detect. And I guess it's really simple. It's just counting up to 25. Once it counts up to 25, then it resets back to 1. I use an index in order to determine what block it's set at. So depending on what voltage it detects, it'll send out that music file set. So that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, please let me know. And thank you for watching.